Welcome to Charts Today, US Open. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 5th of November, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar still holding its strength mostly. We're a little bit weaker today, but generally speaking, it's still looking pretty bullish. Just short term, have some work to do to get back into the bullish zone. The euro up very slightly against the dollar, but again, it looking weaker than the dollar. Against the yen, dollar still looking strong, although it's down slightly. It is actually still bullish on all three time frames, and against the British pound, dollar is actually fairly flat, and so we are just seeing that through the market. Bitcoin down very slightly, did jump last night, but so short-term bullish, but really struggling at this sort of $6,000 level and not much happening there. US markets opening a little bit higher. We look at the Dow up 0.4%. The Nasdaq's actually down a little bit, so that's having an impact. And of course, the Russell 2000 is where we've seen the real sell-off over the last several weeks, is actually outperforming, having been more heavily sold. Looking at the futures, we see the S&P future is up slightly, but the Nasdaq future is down. So that's really where we're seeing the market at the moment. The FTSE 100 in the UK is up slightly. The mid caps in the UK down by 1%. And the German market up very slightly. The US opening not as bad as expected, has just allowed European markets to drift higher, and we saw in Asia overnight some quite big falls. Hong Kong down 2%, Tokyo down 2%. Looking at commodities, Brent crude recovering a little bit this morning, but still bearish. Maybe just finding some cloud support in the medium-term chart, but a lot of downside targets there. And if we look at WTI, much the same picture. The really big move has been in US Natgas. That's up 8% today, and really just showing here that we're really nudging to make multi-year highs. So a really big move there in Natgas, and that's given us a new target on the short-term chart of $4.10. Taking a look at gold. Just coming back very slightly, but holding on to its bullish trend, and silver also holding on to the short-term bull trend. US 10-year yield sitting fairly static at 3.2%, and German bonds now up very slightly, with bond yields having strengthened. They've just come back to flat. Looking at the stock side of things, in Europe, we've got the FTSE 100 best performer is Micro Focus, up 6%. Quite a lot of the commodity stocks, Everaz, Rio Tinto, in the top rises there. On the downside, it tends to be retailers, Burberry, Kingfisher, Just Eat. We're seeing all pushing to new lows on the chart, so not looking great. The FTSE 250, we're seeing again upside performances of 2%. Remembering this index is down by 1% overall. RHI, we're seeing down 7%, Babcock down 7%. We're seeing quite a lot. Hiscox down 6.4%. So still some pretty big fallers across the board there. And in Europe, it's again those UK companies dominating. If we look at the downside, again, Babcock, Hiscox, so not a lot of difference there. Looking into the US market, we look at the Nasdaq to begin with, and in fact, we just take a quick look at the indices. All this data coming from Yahoo Finance. We see the S&P 500 is actually up 0.25%. The Nasdaq 100 down 0.2%. So we are seeing that effect. The Nasdaq, looking at that, we've got Alphabet down 1%. Apple, which is the really big thing in the market at the moment, was down 6% on Friday, down a further 2.5% today. That is not good news for the market. Apple, being such a large constituent, will have a big effect on the market. Facebook back below the 150 mark, so that's pretty bearish. And if we look at Microsoft, slightly down, their trend just holding, and if we look at Netflix down 0.6%, and Nvidia really have just collapsed and still falling another 1.5% today. Tesla, which has been a star the last 2 weeks, is off about 2.5% this morning, so we're seeing that having an impact. In terms of the Dow, we've got Chevron up at 3.45%, so the best performer there. Apple is down, Nike also slightly down. So it is really Nasdaq that is dragging the market down. Tech stocks push the market higher, and that's what's having an impact to push it lower. And we're seeing here in the S&P 500, we've got Cabot Oil up actually 4.9%, so they're looking quite strong, but still the chart looking pretty weak. And if we look at the worst performers, we've got Cisco Corporation down 9%. And so we are seeing still some pretty big falls across the board. So market sentiment not that good. We're still seeing various stocks being selling off, with most of the defensive stocks looking better today, but the tech is still dragging the market down. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.